I will go ahead and call this policy meeting to order, please. And as you can see, we've got the finance policies ahead of us here, and Mike Weaver has joined us in order to help talk through some of these policies. And we will hand it over to you and to Kelly.
Thank you, Kate. So as you had stated, we're moving into the 3000 series policies, which is all our budgeting and finance policies. You'll see tonight that there's 5 policies that are new, that are outdated, that we have not reviewed in quite some time. And then 2 policies that are related to the work we're doing this evening that we did bring before the board and the policy committee last spring, but we just wanted to bring them back again as they go along with the other policies. You will see some updated language changes, most significantly updates to legislative references because the ones in the prior policies have since changed. And probably most notably are some of the budgetary thresholds because that has changed. One of the policies we'll be reviewing this evening, the last time we did so was in '99. So it's been quite some time. So there is a need for some updates. So I will go ahead and bring up the first policy. Just give me one moment to put the phrase. As I'm doing that, I'll just talk through it for a moment. The first policy is going to be 3100. And that policy really talks about an overview of what the responsibilities are of the business office and budgeting. And so I will show it on the screen now. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
And really outlines, and Mike, please feel free to jump in anytime, but really outlines the responsibility of the superintendent and the CFO to overview the budget, and most notably looking at the budget of the current fiscal year, looking at the next fiscal year, talking about expenditures both in the current and upcoming fiscal year, provide any explanations of variances or differences that happen between the 2 budget years, and then any data that is pertinent to the board in making decisions relative to the budget. Mike, is there anything additional you wanted to add on this policy? I think it's probably the most self-explanatory one.
It is. I think it's very helpful, though. It outlines how I present the budget to the individual stakeholders. And I think that over the last 2-3 years that we've been doing the budget, being able to show them not only currently what their current budget is and where they sit, but also being able to show them historically, you know, last year, this is what your budget was. And looking at those differences has opened up some of the conversations that need to happen at that level. And I think it's been very helpful.
And I should also just note that each one of these policies are updates that are recommended by CABE, and the language here has not been altered or tweaked in any way.
Are there any questions from committee members? I don't see any. If that's the case, I'd like to see if we could have a motion to recommend the approval of policy, sorry, the renewal, I guess, of policy 3100, because there's no change to it.
It is updated. I'm sorry, Kate. It is updated. The wording is updated based on CABE recommendations, but the adjustment. So I just want to clarify the adjustment. We did not make any adjustments to CABE's recommended updates, but it is different than the original.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So what should, excuse me, so what should a motion be to recommend it as updated language or no change?
I would recommend it for first read to the board as is.
Okay. As updated. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So sorry, is there a motion on the floor? Juanita, are you making the motion, or do you have a question?
I do have a question. So it's always helpful to know what the language change is. And from what I can see, it is in paragraph 2, the superintendent assisted by.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
I can go ahead and make the motion if that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Juanita. Is there a second, please? Sherry, it looks like you're making the second, so I will take that. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries, and we can move on to the next one. Thank you.
The next policy is 3160, and this is regarding the transfer of funds between categories and making amendments or revisions to the budget. We are recommending, there were a couple, if you read through this in preparation for the meeting, there's 3 different versions to this same policy. We are recommending version 2, which I'll put right at the top of the screen here. In version 2, you'll see here in the italics, permits the transfer of funds under emergency situations without Board of Education approval. Essentially, in an emergency, it would allow Kara as the superintendent or members to make a transfer in an urgent matter or situation of up to $10,000. Mike, do you want to describe a little bit further on the transfer of funds and what that means?
Yeah, I know, Kate, you and I have talked about it before, but when we set the budget, it's at a specific point in time with the best information that we have. And of course, as the year progresses, things happen that are unanticipated. So there's, I guess, 2 trains of thought. One is, well, do we make the transfer in the budget lines to reflect the new information and take away that variance, or do we proceed with the original budget and explain that variance? And I think it's my opinion that it would be better to keep the budget and explain that variance. I think I liken it to, an archery target. If you keep moving the target, yeah, you might hit the center, but it kind of changes the picture. I think it's more important to leave the budget where it is. So I think that this particular policy where we move items through the budget lines would be rare.
Can you think of a circumstance where that might happen, Mike, just so that we can kind of have a sense of it?
Yeah, I'm thinking now as I read the part about emergency situations, and I can't even think of emergency situations where we'd be so frantic that we had to move money between budget lines.
We have contingency funds, correct? That could be used pretty much for any scenario. So,
Yes, with board approval.
okay. And is there an emergency, like an emergency contingency attached to that?
There is not that I believe.
Okay. Apologies to my committee members. Any questions from you? Juanita?
Okay, so the version 2, I guess I'm a little concerned with transfer of funds under emergency situations without Board of Ed approval. Is there any other way that we would be able to word that without saying without their approval, but after notifying, even not asking permission, but after notifying Board of Ed chair? That's just a discussion point.
I think that's important. There is a notation obviously there about letting the board know at the next scheduled meeting, but
Right.
that could be several weeks or depending on what's
Correct.
happening longer, so.
So it's, I'm not saying to take away the authority to do that in an
Mhm.
emergency for that amount of money, but having the courtesy of notifying or, letting the chair know what's going on, what I'm about to do, just notifying you that this is happening and a report will be made at the next board meeting.
Juanita, I added in just a little comment. I don't know our language. If that what you're trying to accomplish.
It is. I was trying to hear from some other committee members to get their take on it.
I'm also happy
Sherry,
to
you're
comment
speaking?
after.
Oh, so sorry. Give me just a
Yep,
second, Karen, sorry.
yes, absolutely.
I see that, Sherry, you're trying to talk. We just can't hear you because you're on mute at the moment. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add. Or if you want to type it into the chat, perhaps that would be easier. We could take a look. Gladys, did you have any feedback in the meantime?
Maybe, did that help?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, no, I was just saying, you're saying as long, in an emergency situation, as long as, Louisa is notified somehow, but you're still able to go ahead and do it. And then just do it after. You're gonna notify her, let her know after, as long as she knows. That's what you're saying, correct?
I'm kind of saying, notifying the board chair that, I'm making a decision about an emergency situation and just making you aware.
Yes.
The written report or oral report or whatever comes to the board at the next meeting,
Yes, I agree with
but
that.
keeps the window of communication open between the superintendent and the board chair.
Yes. Okay, I'm just making sure I understand that correctly and that makes sense to me.
Gladys, did you want to weigh in?
No, it's okay with me, and I understand, and I hope that we don't have anybody in a position that would, not bring anything forth to the board that we making a decision like that. So, I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want to weigh in?
Only to just clarify that, the in the spirit of of what an emergency is, it's that it preclude, that it may preclude initial permission. So while the intent would be, you'd hope you get a hold of the board chair, in a situation, you may be dealing with a situation that precludes you for that effective communication, but the should have an immediate follow-up at the earliest possible opportunity to communicate that with the expectation of a more detailed follow-up. So that's all I was just thinking about. And as Mike iterated before, I'm racking my brain trying to think of an emergency reason why I might move money from one line to the other. And other than just explaining a variance at the appropriate time and the reason, and I can't really think of one at the moment. So I'm just I'm racking my brain on the actual policy itself. And I don't know, Mike, if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think of is, the few months during the summer where the board is not in session, maybe. But I mean, very little, very few circumstances I could think of. A natural disaster, perhaps.
Right.
And Sarah, if this helps provide, it is a required policy, so I understand that we may use it far and few between, and I agree, I have difficulty thinking it is something that we are required to have.
Yep. Good with it.
I think there is merit to it, just because right now, we're handling variances the way that we are, and with the intention of sort of using that to inform our budget process, it is possible somewhere down the line before this policy is reviewed again that we might operate differently. And this gives us the financial guideline to operate by, which I think is helpful. Is that language okay with everybody? I'm asking my committee members here.
Can I jump in again?
Mhm.
So where the wording says after notifying the board chair, it sounds a little funny after that. So
Yes, because of the emergency, you're saying emergency, but then you're saying
Yeah.
after notifying the chair. So it would have to come, if it's an emergency, you have to act. And then later notify if it's an absolute emergency, correct? I don't know. That's my
Is
thought.
that what you were
No,
thinking, Juanita? Are we thinking
right,
for
exactly.
clarity of expression?
Exactly. And
Okay.
so giving authorization amount less than 10,000 under emergency conditions, if the urgent need for the transfer prevents notification to the board chair prior, something in there. Sorry.
What if after under emergency conditions, we put in parentheses after notifying the board chair? So the superintendent
Um,
or her designee is authorized to transfer funds from any line item in an amount less than $10,000 under emergency conditions, parentheses after notifying the board chair, and parentheses. If the urgent need
um,
for the transfer prevents the board.
and should we not, we can say notify, we can say attempting to contact, I'm saying an email, a text, a phone call. It doesn't have to be a sit down. It's just notification or some form of contact.
Yeah, I think that would be covered by
So I
this.
don't even want to say after notifying board chair. I want to say notifying board chair in a timely manner. Does that,
Notifying the board chair within 24 hours? Do you want to put a time window on it?
um,
Can I make a suggestion? What if we put in the next sentence, the superintendent, after making this action, the superintendent will have timely communication with the board chair?
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mhm,
Does that work?
mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Because if a situation come up and she cannot contact the board chair and she has to do it right away, she has to have some type of leverage to do that. And
How does that look? Maybe after making this decision?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Does that read okay to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other suggestions for this policy or concerns about this policy before we look to make a motion? All right, I will look for a motion then to recommend policy 3160 to the board for a first read. Is there a motion, please?
I made the motion.
Thank you, Gladys. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sherry. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much. We can move on.
The next policy is policy 3260, and it's regarding sale and disposal of obsolete books, equipment, and supplies. And this policy goes on to spell out the manner in which we should get rid of things that are obsolete or no longer valuable to the district. It talks about the superintendent's responsibilities and then notifications to the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike just to describe it in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, there have been a few times recently where we had items that were no longer needed. I think most recently were some outdated books, and that's kind of when I looked at the policy. I think the original policy, Kelly, was it was less than 2,000.
Correct. It was 1,000.
Yeah, it was 1,000, and the amount of items, just because of the escalation of costs since this policy was adopted. I think the 2,000 is more appropriate. When we look at the cost of even just a used Chromebook, it makes sense to me.
There is some latitude within this policy if we wanted to increase this to give Kara more authority to dispose of items. We could increase it up to an amount such as 5,000. As we had stated, this is the CABE policy as written, but there are some notations that sometimes in larger districts that have greater volume of materials, supplies, technology, for example, that we might want to consider an increase of that number, but at a minimum, the 2,000 would be our recommended update to the policy.
Sorry about that. Committee members, do we have any questions or comments about this policy?
I don't.
So are these things that we just don't use anymore, obviously?
Correct. So it could be things like broken technology, for example, broken student Chromebooks. It could be outdated, history books, things of that nature.
Okay, but everything still is like an inventory, so it has to be accounted for even when you get rid of it. That's what they're doing.
That's the intent of this policy, to make sure that people are not discarding of, district purchased supplies, equipment, and material without following the appropriate.
Thank you.
Juanita?
Is it only the monetary amount that has changed in the policy? Or we don't have the policy?
I can put up the prior policy if you give me one moment.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's fine. I see it now. So help me understand number 2.
So if
Are you talking about, go ahead.
I believe what it's saying is if the amount is over 2,000, then the procedure for us to get rid of the surplus item, the superintendent goes to, it says town agencies, but really the city, to see if such an asset would be useful to somewhere else in the city prior to that. And there may be more than 2 departments within the city that are interested in that item. I think that's what that's addressing.
And so, Mike, further down, right after 3, it talks about obsolete or surplus equipment may be sold at public sale. How often do public sales happen? How are they advertised? Um, how are community groups or organizations notified?
Um, I could, if I could ask Kelly and Kara, I don't believe that that's happened in my tenure,
Okay,
where we've had a public sale. But I think if the city does not, or no departments or agencies in the city have interest in such item, it can go to public sale. And part of that is also that stating that we can't sell to an employee unless it's at a general sale, kind of an arm's length transaction.
I cannot recall a time, and go ahead, Kara.
Sorry, same Kelly. I don't recall a public sale. I do know it is common, you know, if we ask this, hey, we've got, 30 old cafeteria tables that aren't in great shape anymore. Any interest, most often it's no, we have no, the city doesn't have a need or a place for those types of things. But local school systems in our area will often, after they've gone to their town and there's no need, will often put up pictures and show one another, hey, I have these older chairs if anybody could use them. 9.9 times out of 10, no one wants the older, items. And so they end up really hanging around, clogging up storage. And then you just have to make a decision as to their value. So that's the other part of this is how do you determine the value of, 30 cafeteria tables? And a lot of that is subjective to and relative to someone's need for them. So we don't have an infrastructure per se to hold sales and do that. It might be something down the road, but even this year with our ability to support a lot of schools with upgrading their furniture and getting rid of a lot of things, we will have a lot of furniture that is being discarded or unwanted from the schools. There's not a great mechanism to market those materials, but most of that that's coming out is maybe of little to no value to others because of its age and the life of the material. So we do try to post internally, like I said, amongst the area schools. Last couple of years ago, we were able to take third grade desks and second and third grade desks over at Morris Street because they were in pretty good condition, and it did save us some money. So, but we don't have a good system for selling.
I do see on this policy that the previous version essentially forced us to turn over any materials that were no longer needed or used that would go to the custody of the city of Danbury. It's sort of an interesting question that Juanita raised because I know that the city has had auctions for different things of significant value, which they do
Mhm.
post, and provide an announcement in the paper and that kind of thing. But if I'm
Mhm.
reading correctly, that's just no longer the way that the no longer the recommendation of the policy. Is that correct? We would offer it to town agencies, but the materials themselves would not become the property of the city unless the agency accepts whatever materials they are.
Correct.
I can also talk to Roberto too about, this is not something that we've had a long conversation about. I could certainly broach it with him to see if there's a way we can make better use of channeling any materials that are of value or could be of value and how he wants to proceed as well.
The other thing
Are
that
there,
I think, oh, I'm
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to add, it also protects, oftentimes as a classroom teacher comes in, they will inherit a lot of district property and supplies. And this policy also protects against, people discarding of things that the district wants to keep in-house, curriculum materials, books, things of that nature. And while many teachers, wrap their arms around those extra things, there are some that like to clean house a little bit. And this policy really makes them think about, what is the appropriate process to go about discarding of items should they need to.
Thank you for the feedback. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members?
In the original document, it talks about trade-in materials. Do we need that language, or if we have curriculum items that we update and the company accepts trade-ins, do we just normally do that without having it stated?
Kelly, would you mind pulling that up? Because that actually has come up in the past. I just wanted to see what that looked like.
Give me one sec.
While she's pulling that up, Juanita, we did have a case where we purchased a new truck for our facilities team. The prior one was in disrepair. We got almost nothing for it. We almost had to have to pay them to come take it. So I don't think it would have been included in that, but I could foresee that happening in the future with things like vehicles. And they usually try, we work with vendors on the state bid, so they try to would try to use a trade-in value in the value of the new vehicle. So it might be interesting just to see what that looks like.
Sorry, just give me a moment. It's not cooperating.
Years ago, there was a company that would buy back books if there was value. If you were upgrading, changing your program, they'd give you $1.50 a book. A lot of those companies don't exist anymore. We've been unable to find those companies. And in those cases, they would go through and barcode scan what it is you're looking to discard. And maybe, out of 1,000 books or 500 books, they would probably take maybe 50 or 100, and you'd get a check for maybe $50, and that would go into back into the instructional supplies.
What about donations, like to the library or something? Would that be covered, or is the material so obsolete that it's best out of circulation?
Well, we've had lots of books in the warehouse that have gone, just could not get rid of them. No one wanted them, and after a while, they start to decay and get dry and moldy. If it's not air, air controlled, humidity controlled. So I do think so if this is the policy, I do think it'll be helpful to develop some guidance underneath it for different items and different departments where we know from time to time these things come up. Because I don't think the policy could cover every scenario, but I think that's where maybe some regulations and guidance could come in.
All right. Any other feedback from committee members? All right, I will look for a motion to recommend policy 3260 to the board for first read. Is there a motion?
Juanita have the hand up. Is that the motion?
No, let me take that down.
I make the motion that we put this forward to the board for first reading.
Thank you, Gladys. Is there a second, please? Sherry, I see you making the motion. The second. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any
Abstain.
abstentions? Abstaining?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, motion does carry. That will go to the board for a first read. All right, we can move on when you're ready.
The next policy is 3280, and this is about gifts and grants. And so this talks about how we should accepting gifts from outside parties. I know recently at our last Board of Ed meeting, we had a donation in which the board voted on. It also goes on to talk about crowdfunding, which is a newer concept since the last policy was written. These are for things like donors choose, in which teachers write grants to try to obtain items for their classrooms. Sometimes they could be pieces of technology, additional resources for students to use, or other items. And this really specifies that anything that's obtained through those crowdfunding sources is considered property of the board.
Are there questions from committee members? May I ask, is this in practice already? And we're just talking about the formality of putting this into policy, or is this something new we're trying to implement?
Are you talking about the crowdfunding and the property of the board?
Notifying the principal of the request. Yeah.
So as far as the items being property of the board, that is something brought into the consistent teacher stand is definitely something that we feel that this policy will help to support.
Kelly, I apologize. The audio got a little messed up on my end. If you wouldn't mind just repeating that. Sorry.
So the items being the property of the board. Mike, go ahead.
No, you cut out at the same exact spot.
I don't know why. I can tell my screen is freezing and I don't know why. Go ahead. Mike, can you explain the crowdfunding, please?
I'll just jump in maybe, if everyone can hear me okay. So what has happened in the schools is we have put some guidelines in place and sort of permission based for folks who are doing crowdsourcing, or you know, asking, setting up a GoFundMe to ask for furniture or technology or computers in the classrooms. And we've been very clear, and we've had to be clear because we've had some issues, that if you are crowdsourcing or fundraising on behalf of the school system, then the property that you gain as a result of that, first you need permission from your principal, right, to make sure. And at some point, sometimes it has to be you might have to go through the technology director. So you shouldn't be asking for technology equipment or software that is not compatible with ours, or can pose a safety risk, or there's a privacy issue. So you have to have a lot of clearances before you have permission to advocate and post and ask for certain types of items. And once you get cleared and go through those hurdles, that property then becomes the property of the school district. So if you leave and go to another school district, and 15 desks were acquired for your classroom, or some furniture, some laptop and equipment, that remains the property of the district, because the people who donated it were donating it to the Danbury Public Schools on behalf of the children in the school system. So we have to be very, we're very clear about that, and the policy will help to reinforce that understanding.
Okay, so in other words, there's an existing, even if it's not a written regulation, a practical regulation that is already being applied in the same way.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification. Committee members, any questions or concerns about this policy?
Oh, Sherry. I think Sherry's speaking.
Yeah, Sherry, I'm not sure if you're trying to communicate with us, but you are muted right now. Okay. I don't see any questions. This is the last chance for anyone to weigh in on this policy.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, apologize, I'm having trouble with whatever. I can't even explain it. But Is there like a website? Do people go on the Danbury Public School website and do people post things somewhere that um, whatever kinds of needs that they have? Any classrooms or is that just is that not how it ever works? You know, with
think the
donations.
Muted.
I thought I heard somebody say that, you know, like teachers might post, oh my God, I need crayons, this, that, whatever, you know, whatever it is. Is there such a thing?
Carrie, you're on mute.
Oh, brother. Okay, never mind. Something's wrong with my thing. Never mind. Just
No, Sherry, you're okay. We hear
Yeah.
you.
Teachers often use GoFundMe.
oh,
There isn't
okay.
a DPS site, but teachers will often ask for things on through GoFundMe.
Right.
You know, and the last couple of years or so, sometimes we've noticed they've posted things that we have available for them.
Okay.
We just need to know that there's a need, and so. You know, that's why it's part of the reason for the process of having a conversation with your principal and make sure that, you know, whatever it is that you're asking for is can't be solved by our district first, and that it is in line with our goals and priorities and technology needs for the school system.
Got it. Thank you.
I think this storm is goofing with all the Wi-Fi here today.
Yeah, I can't see anybody now. I have no idea why. I can't see the reading.
Juanita, you have your hand up?
Well, a question for Kara. Kara, at our last meeting, we had a donation to one of our schools. Can you just, for clarification, walk us through the process of presenting that to the board? What,
The donation itself?
well, the individuals, did they approach the teacher? Did they approach?
Oh, sure. Yes, and I was under impression that the person who was donating, most often they will come and we kind of walk a little bit through that and what the aim was. But in this particular case, this gentleman is a mentor for the school and noticed that the basketball rims and the apparatus was in need of a replacement, and that was something that was a desire at the school that really wasn't quite on our list this year, but was adamant that and very kind and wanting to replace that and upgrade that for the school system. So that person also reached out to say, hey, how much is installation? If I get the boards, will you install? And so there were some conversations there that happened there. And then the actual cost, the estimation for the backboards were about $3,500 total for both. And then I believe it ended up covering the installation as well by the time they were done having those conversations with the folks who would be responsible to install that. So it was a generous donation and, you know, just symbolic of things at the school and the mentorship and who's, you know, what they do when they come to the school. And so because it was over $1,000, we have to formally accept it so that it's transparent. There's a transparency in an exchange for something of monetary value.
and is there ever an example of what we would not accept? I mean, say somebody wanted to give $50,000 to Park Avenue School. It says here, I think initially everything goes into the school district as a whole, correct? And not for a particular school. And I'm thinking it's an exorbitant amount. They may have it earmarked for, but is there ever a time?
So I lost you at, is there ever a time?
Is there ever a time that we would say, I'm sorry, we cannot just give that to one particular school? We would have to put it
So
into
I
our,
had I had
Mhm.
had an example in the last couple of years where I turned down an offer because it was an offer of, I would say, quid pro quo, where
Mm.
someone wanted to make a donation, but had asked for something in return to happen in the school. And
Mhm.
in that instance, that's not something that we should do or can do. So that's an example. In an offer and a donation to support the school in some way, even if it is at the school level, it could be an alum, perhaps. There has to be no strings attached to it, and I think that that's important.
Okay,
So I can't.
thank you.
We're not going to donate the basketball rims, but I want to come play on the courts at night with my friends on Thursdays, and you're going to let
Mm.
me in, and I have access to the courts forevermore, or things like that. So they have to completely free of any strings.
Okay, thank you.
There a follow-up question to that. Is that something that should be specified in policy, or is that covered sort of by your, the superintendent's code of conduct or ethical,
I just think it's an
obligations?
integrity thing of it, yeah. And I mean, we could, certainly try to codify that, but it's almost, kind of stands to reason that, we're not for sale, and the access to the school system in different ways is not contingent upon donations and things like that. So we could certainly put language. I don't think it's necessary so long as you feel you have ethical people running your school district, but policies are designed to lay out what those ethics are and what those guardrails are. So it's certainly possible to lay that out if the board felt comfortable doing that.
There is a
Thank you.
line in there that reads, the superintendent of schools shall set up criteria to be met in the acceptance of gifts and the procedure for examining and evaluating offers of gifts to the district. So I think it does reference the superintendent taking those things into consideration before making a decision.
I guess to Kara's point, though, it depends on the ethics of the person who holds that position.
Mhm.
Committee members, would you consider putting an additional line after that, which specifically states that gifts cannot be utilized to,
Obligate the school system. in any
cannot
way,
be used to obligate the school system to,
or to provide a service.
or to meet the request of the donor.
Special interests.
To meet a special request. I would just say a special request of the donor.
I've added in a line just to take a look at.
What do we think about that language?
I like it.
Okay. Okay.
Sherry, it looks like Sherry dropped off here. But we do still have 3 committee members, so we can continue. Hopefully she'll be able to jump back on.
Mhm.
All right. Well, before we move forward, Gladys or Juanita, do you have anything else to add on this policy?
No.
No.
Okay. Then in that case, I'm going to look for a recommendation to recommend. Sorry, I'm going to look for a motion to recommend policy 3280 to the full board for a first read, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Juanita. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gladys. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We can move on.
The next policy is 3323, and I am operating the screen on one computer and talking on the other, so I apologize. You see two of me. This policy, I want to bring to the board's attention. We did bring before the committee last spring. And this was one of those required mandated updates that we had to do. So we are not proposing any changes, but it is kind of in line with some of the other policies that we've reviewed tonight, which is why it's on the agenda. This is about prices and bidding requirements, essentially talking about the need for the district to go out and competitively bid, particularly when items cost a bit of money. So in this case, this policy requires two bids. One in an item of purchase exceeds $15,000, and three bids when it's in excess of $25,000. The $15,000 is required. It's a federal grant requirement as a minimum to have at least two bids. And it goes on to specify just some exceptions to those rules. If, for example, if it's a professional service, so, an attorney, a contract employee, things of that nature, you are not required to have multiple bids. If it's on the Connecticut approved vendor list, you're not required to have multiple bids. If it's a unique or sole source item, meaning like one company makes that item and you cannot buy it from other places, sometimes we run into that with curriculum or other very specialized supplies and equipment. And then lastly, in emergency situations, when it does not allow time to adequately get those bids. Mike, is there anything additional that you wanted to add about this policy?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
So we are just recommending to update that the policy committee reviewed this and just note that that update date on the policy.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions about this policy? Again, was just passed in July last year, or sorry, June last year.
June.
Mhm. All right, if there are no questions or feedback, does anyone need a minute or two? All right, then I will look for a motion to recommend the renewal of policy 3323 with the updated date there. So recommend that to the board for first read. Or let me ask you, Kelly, I apologize. I just want to make sure procedurally I'm doing this correct. If we are just renewing the policy and so we're applying an updated date on there, would it go through a second read?
You don't have to do a second read as you've already approved it and there's no changes. So it would just be an update. You could do one read.
Okay, so we're recommending the policy be updated and recommend this to the board for full final read. Is there a motion on the floor, please?
I make the motion that we recommend this to the board for further update and a final read.
Thank you, Gladys. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Juanita. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Please continue. Thank you.
Thank you. The next policy is 3320, purchasing procedures. This policy is referenced in the previous policy that we just reviewed, and we reviewed this as well in June of last year. So we are asking just for a renewal update. And this really talks about developing policies and procedures regarding how you purchase different items. And Mike, I'll let you describe this one in a little bit more detail.
332, I'm on the wrong policy.
That's okay.
I'm working off one screen, so.
All good.
Yeah, so this, like Kelly said, is talking about the rules and regulations that were referenced in the previous policy 3323 in regards to purchasing. So, like Kelly said, there were no changes here. This is just again a renewal of the policy that was from June 25 of 25.
And it's really, if I could just add, just talking about that we're buying proper products, that we're only buying the amount that we need, so we're not overbuying or underbuying. And that we're paying, a fair or proper price for those. So it's really capturing, even if we're not required to get multiple quotes, let's say the item only costs $500, that we are paying what is, fair market price for it and not in excess of that.
Right.
Right?
Committee
If further,
members?
sorry.
Sorry, Kelly.
I was just going to say, it also references, it's one of the policies that references kind of uniquely that it's both the obligation of both the educational side of the organization and the business office. So while Mike is definitely making sure we're adhering to all the proper policies, the educators are the administrators, for example, are the ones that know exactly the number, quantity, or amount that are probably most appropriate to purchase. So I like that it references kind of the joint partnership between the two sides of the organization.
Mhm.
This is one of the policies that when we are audited on our non-salaries items, that they go to the most to check that there are proper purchase orders, there are signatures on those obligations, and they're either signed by the superintendent or myself, and that there are that we've attached the bills and their ordering receipts. It is a small policy, but there is a lot packed in there at least when it comes to the audit.
Committee members, any questions or feedback on this policy? On these two policies? In that case, I will look for a motion to recommend policy 3320 to the full board for update and a final read.
I make a motion that we move policy 3320 to the board, showing an update and for final read.
Thank you, Anita. Is there a second, please?
I second it.
Thank you, Gladys. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to the very last policy, and that is 3326.
So policy 3326 is paying for goods and services. You will see here that there is a policy and then an alternate language. We are recommending the alternative language for the policy, which basically indicates that the superintendent and his or her designee shall be authorized to approve for payment the current obligations of the school district, and a report of these expenditures should be made available to the board at regular meetings. So putting the purchasing authority on the superintendent and their designee, while mandating that they're reporting back out to the board how they're spending the board approved budget. Mike, anything additional you wanted to add?
I just read the original policy before the alternate language, and I swallow hard because I could just imagine having to go to the board every time we have to pay a bill or enter into a contract. That would be quite cumbersome. Maybe for a smaller school district, it might not be that bad, but even then, some of the quotes that we get are time sensitive, and the sellers will say, you have 3 days to get me a purchase order, or we're not guaranteeing the pricing. I think the alternate is strongly advised.
Can I just, okay, never mind. I was gonna ask a clarifying question about expenditures being made as a regular report. So we don't quite do that, although we do go over monthly financials, but not the individual. We go over the
Yeah, I
larger
was thinking about
buckets.
that too, Kara. I don't read that to mean that we have the full list of purchase orders that we've went through for the entire month. Rather that the report
Right.
is that, but in summary fashion, which is the financials.
Monthly financials. Okay, thank you. Just clarifying.
Mike, can I just clarify, are you recommending only the alternate language here?
Yes.
Committee members, do we have feedback on this policy and the recommendation to adopt the alternate language at the bottom specifically? Juanita, go ahead.
You can tell that I was a teacher with the raised hand for every. So Mike, let me, because there were a little bit of a question with that sentence, shall be authorized to approve for payment the current obligations of the school district. Would it be helpful or not helpful to say approve the payment of the monthly obligations of the school district, a report of these, or just a report of monthly expenditures shall be made at a regular school meeting?
I mean, we could certainly add like onto the financial statement package that we have, we could add another report that has more detailed expenditures.
Hmm.
If that's what you were if
Well,
that's what you're meaning.
no, I'm trying to keep it so that what's reported at our meetings is enough. So when, yeah, and should we have to be, yeah. Because isn't that what we do at our meetings?
It is. Yeah, I see what you're saying now.
So I don't want to be confused with the word current obligations. If we can just, the monthly reporting, financial reporting would cover any current obligations or payments or whatever. Yeah, a summary report of monthly expenditures shall be made at the regular meetings of the board.
Given that we don't hear, like a report is not made to us, it's given to us when we, with the financial committee minutes that are provided. Yeah, I wonder if we should change that language. Provided?
Provided.
Does that make sense to you, Mike?
It does.
Okay.
Anything else on this policy here? Are we in agreement that we would just choose to use the alternate language?
Mm. So let me just comment on, I like the alternate language up above where it says paying for goods and services. Authorized payment for goods and services under the following conditions. I believe those conditions have already been addressed and earlier,
3321, 3323.
Can you help me understand, Juanita? I'm not sure I fully grasp
right,
what you're
so
saying.
number one, the expenditure is within budgetary limits. In a previous policy, we talked about that the expenditures must be within um, the the line items limit,
Mhm.
unless it's an emergency. But and then it's made within approved purchasing policies and regulations. Two bids. Um, we talked about the conditions of purchasing. Now, the equipment has to be certified for purchasing. We have to have approval. Um, I don't know about received in acceptable condition. I'm not sure about all that, but yeah.
I personally do not certify the goods are received in an acceptable that, and the reason is because it could go to one of our 23 locations. So it's usually the person doing the receiving that will sign off on that.
I just added it here if you wanted to add in some of these three, and we probably should make tweaks to the third item, Mike, to your point. But if you wanted to add that in under the alternative language, but still keep the purchasing power under the superintendent and or the designate, you could put it in like I highlighted here.
Mm.
I do think, Juanita, to your point, it's covered in prior policies. That's why we reviewed the previous two policies. But if you felt strongly it should be reiterated here, we could do it. But we'd want to play around with the wording in number 3.
Correct. Yeah. I'm not opposed to that.
I think at the board level, that offers us a little bit more protection to have multiple policies that specify the same conditions. So I would support the inclusion of that language, provided we adjust number 3.
I just took out the reference to Mike in there, and it says certified by the purchasing agent as received in acceptable condition, and that would be whomever is receiving the order.
Okay.
Mike, does that feel comfortable to you?
Yes, it does. I'm just thinking, in off event, right? If Jessica orders office supplies, it might be received by one of the custodians, not necessarily the person that purchased it, but she would review it before we made payment.
Mhm.
So maybe at the end of that, by received in acceptable condition or service having been completed in an acceptable manner before payment. Not necessarily at the time that you're receiving.
Mm.
Does that look okay, Mike?
I think so.
How does that read to committee members now?
I can't see it. So,
I'm sorry.
no, you're not.
Is that better?
That's better. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And you comfortable with that, Mike?
Yes, I am, Ms. Cooper.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right, one last call for feedback or any other comments about this particular policy with those adjustments made. Again, we would just be adopting alternate language here. All right, I don't see any questions, so I will look for a motion to bring policy 3326 to the board for a first read, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Juanita. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gladys. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. All right. It looks like we are going to have a quick discussion about our dress code policy to talk about survey results and regulation recommendations. I know that that was discussed a little bit at the board meeting, so I just want to give you an opportunity to expand on any of that. Whether that's you, Dr. Casimiro, or Kelly, if you want to field that, I'm not sure.
Right. Kara, you let me know. Do you want to start the discussion or you want me to do it?
Sorry, I was trying to get back to I lost my way here.
You're good.
So sure. So it's just a recap of the discussion the other night that it appears that there's, by the way of the survey as it reads now, and again, deeper analysis is needed, but on the surface and on the whole, it does not appear to be misunderstanding or folks feel that the current policy as it stands is the issue, and that they feel that things are applied fairly and that no groups are being harmed. Where the rub tends to has surfaced is in interpretation of some of the regulations, or in this case, really the guidance underneath in terms of our code of conduct and what's allowable and what's not allowable. That is, whether or not a skirt is the right appropriate length and how to determine that. So is it at, the fingertip model when you stand up and you put your arms down and that is sufficient versus a particular inseam size of a pair of shorts, for example. Things like footwear, there was a lot of questions around footwear, slippers versus Uggs, for instance, that, Uggs slippers that kind of cross the line that are meant to be worn out, but are actually slippers. Crocs, things of that nature, flip-flops. So there were some questions around the need to clarify those things, but more than anything, the need to be consistent in the expectations, however they're being interpreted. So we have some work to do with the clarity around detailing out those expectations, but I don't believe that they have an effect on the actual policy as it stands. So I no longer think this is a policy matter as it is more of a social dynamic and clarity and communication that we have to address around our dress code. That is absent of the conversation around uniforms, which is part and parcel to if we're going to clarify those guardrails or those regulations or the code of conduct, how does the uniform conversation play a role in that? But I don't believe it's part of policy at this point, unless through those discussions we go back and add something to policy. But for now, I think we can take it off the policy plate, and it's more of a board conversation and discussion on their priorities.
Thank you. Appreciate that update and reiterating what we heard at the meeting on Wednesday. Are there ways that the board should be prepared to support you and support the administration in this work ahead? And if so,
Sure. I think, yes. So I think I think the issue is twofold moving forward. One is tightening up and pulling some of the administrators in, and let's just make some decisions around our range of acceptability and the guardrails around the dress code and come to an agreement on those issues together. And then we lock in, and when it comes to applying those and enforcing those consistently with a progressive form of discussions with students that range from please go change that to there's a progressive discipline, I would say, that comes beyond change your clothes, you're going to get sent home, perhaps there's a detention involved. We have to come to some clarity on those and the appropriateness by grade level and reinforcing that. And then everyone has to enforce it. So if I walk into the schools or the board walks into the schools, they should see an enforced dress code being enacted. So you shouldn't see students walking around outside of that code unaddressed by the staff or the administration. So that requires me to create a sense of urgency around that and to reinforce it through additional conversations and my expectations for implementation. So how can the board help? I think, I would like to keep you posted on the status of those conversations, but I think we should, as I mentioned last night, I think there's another conversation to be had around the uniforms. And I think that will take probably a whole year to have that conversation. In the short term, I'm going to clarify expectations on our current policy. And I think that as a board and as a team, governance team, we work towards understanding and unpacking what a move to a school uniform would look like and what the implications are on all sides and for all people.
In terms of any adjustments that or conversations you might have with administrators, would you expect to sort of flesh out the regulations at all? What I'm trying to get at here is whether or not there is a way we can do outreach to parents with some more specific guidelines other than what's outlined in the policy. Because I do
Sure.
think the policy is clear, but I also think that if you're talking about, regulating things in a very, these are the specific lines that we are drawing, it may be helpful for parents to also be brought into that conversation.
Absolutely. And certainly we can highlight some board meetings where we are inviting public discussion, right? Inviting public comment in certain areas, but also perhaps some community conversations around it so we can understand what some of the barriers may be. So even though we had, I think, 788 responses on one survey and a little under 200 on each of the others, there's still, there's 11,400 families, students in our school system. And so we certainly did not hear from every single family. And so maybe providing an alternate route to hear families that may be more convenient or meeting them where they are could be beneficial for the board to be able to create that access. Certainly supported together, with me, your superintendent.
Gladys or Juanita, any questions or feedback for this conversation?
If we going to, and we talk about the dress code, is it going to be across the board? Because, some of our teachers do not come dressed appropriate to teach kids anyway. So, I'm going back and thinking back and when I first came to Danbury, and I used to see, but we have quite a few teachers that are retired that belong to my church. And we often talk about how, the dress code was then and how slack it is now. And that includes the principal, secretary, and whoever within the system. So that's my only comment. And how are we going to enforce that?
It's a great point, Gladys, and it certainly has come up in the survey under some of the commentary and opportunity to provide some comments that there is a nod to that as well. And so I think that, it warrants conversation across the board. And, we have to do those things carefully and within the bounds of contracts and address them through that as well, that manner as well. There currently is not an adult dress code in our district, believe it or not.
That's good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gladys, did you have something further before I
No,
call
I
on
was
what-
just saying whether we have a dress code, and I think people that work within the system know how to dress and dress appropriately. And you know, it's a long process. 5, 10 years from
It
now,
is. I agree with you.
it's a long
I agree with you, Ms.
process,
Cooper.
you know. So anyway, uh, and
Gotta start
Juanita has
somewhere.
her hand up.
Yes. Juanita?
So I just commend our district for even tackling this whole issue. Um, what I hear from the staff, again, is the consistent manner in which the administration will respond to students sent to the office or students um, dressing inappropriately. We do have an opportunity, I believe, with our academies to kind of dig in with that kind of dress that goes along with the career area that you are approaching. And so I think that as we, if we can kind of get that in, even when they do their field trips, if we can get that nod in to wherever they are going, that we are also, this is an issue that we'd like you to touch on, because it certainly is a part of going into a career. Now, as far as the teachers, I think that you're going to have to go through your union with that. And, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, my opinion. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I agree. And when it comes to getting our students ready to on proper appropriate dress and just having this an semblance of that, if they want to be able to go out and go on an internship or job shadow, and they have to understand that there's a decorum out there. And you know, part of the academy model and the portrait of the graduate speaks to that future readiness. And I think you know, addressing this aspect of it, whether it's a uniform or just proper dress for school, is important.
All right. Anything further before we close this out?
Do you have any comments, Kate?
I agree with you, Juanita. I think this is such an important conversation for us to have, and it is not only about getting kids into the proper headspace and um, you know, a sense of professionalism for school, but this is important for them as they enter the world and understand that the first impression, for better or for worse, that we all make is the way that we present ourselves and how we carry ourselves and what clothing we're wearing. So I think this is the right move for the district, and I agree. I applaud the administration being willing to tackle this particular issue because it certainly comes with a lot of opinions.
Sure.
And it's going to be a fight on both sides.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, I think we can call it at 7:29 p.m. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Gladys. Is there a second, please? Juanita, you're muted. Okay. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.